reforms in your countries. We know, of course, that all of you have been hard hit by recent developments with regard to the pandemic.
Die Pandemie natürlich noch einmal ganz anders erleben.
You have experienced the pandemic in quite a different way. On the one hand, the people in Africa tend to be younger, which has the advantage that you aren't necessarily as massively hit by the pandemic, not as hard hit as we have been in Europe, because we tend to have an average age of 46 or 47, whereas the average age of the population is 17 on the African continent. Thus, we will talk later today in the non-public part of our discussions about what we need to do to ensure sufficient supply of vaccines for Africa, and how we can make sure that you can set up your own production plants on the African continent. As I said, I'm delighted about the fact that this compact with Africa has so many friends. A very warm welcome goes out to Mario Draghi, the present chair of the G20. On my screen, I can also see not only the Commission of the African Union, but also the representatives of the European Union that are present today, Ursula von der Leyen and Charles Michel, that is. We have the World Bank here, the IMF, David Malpass and Kristalina Georgieva. So I think we form a good group of people. The African Development Bank is represented by its president, Akin Adesina. And of course, I welcome the president of the Compact for Africa countries that have set out on the long journey to Berlin. We are very grateful for you making that effort. Thank you for being with us today and providing us the opportunity to discuss these matters in a special circle. When we begin with the second part later, get to the second part later, the CEO of BioNTech will be present here, who developed a vaccine. He will join us, and some of you, I trust, have already had the opportunity to talk to him today. This is undoubtedly going to be one of the toughest meetings I've ever had to chair in my long political career and long political lives, because we have so many people who would like to take the floor, but time is limited, and my request thus would be, please keep a watchful eye on the time you take the floor. And let's just run right into the heart of the matter, if I may. I would like to begin by calling the speakers on the basis of the alphabet. We'll begin with our African partners first. I hand the floor to the Egyptian President, Abdel Sisi. I already welcome him. You will be our first speaker. We're delighted to have you here via video link from Cairo. God the merciful, the all-powerful.
Kann ich noch einmal, ich habe alles durcheinander gebracht.
And the Chancellor said he's afraid that she has been delivered. That unfortunately she took the Egyptian president first, but it was Mario Draghi who was supposed to take the floor, and then Cyril Ramaphosa, then the chair of the AU, and then we turn to the business conference today, and only then do we turn to the heads of state of the Compact with Africa countries. So let's hand the floor to Mario Draghi first. Warm words of welcome go out to Rome. You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you. Dear Angela, dear colleagues, distinguished participants, I'm delighted to take the floor as presidency of the G20 at this event on the Compact with Africa. First of all, I would like to thank you, Angela, for your leadership in promoting such a strong partnership between the G20 and the African continent. This meeting occurs at pivotal time in the relationship between Africa and the rest of the world. The pandemic is increasingly under control in many advanced economies, but this is not the case in the world's poorest countries. Access to vaccines has been grossly unequal. Close to 60% of the population in high-income countries has received at least one dose, and in some countries, they even think about a third dose now. In low-income countries, this proportion is merely 1.4%. The global recovery is just as uneven. Governments have not had the same fiscal space to mitigate the pandemic shock. Advanced economies spent 28% of their 2020 gross domestic product to boost growth. Emerging markets and low-income economies spent just between 7 and 2%. Such differences deepen global inequalities and make it harder for all of us to bring the pandemic to an end. We must do more, much more, to help the countries that are most in need. The G20 supports the equitable distribution of safe and affordable vaccines through initiatives such as the COVAX facility and the Africa Vaccine Acquisition Task Team. COVAX has so far shipped close to 210 million vaccines worldwide. AVAT is set to deploy 400 million vaccines across Africa. But these figures must be only a start. The G20 has also rolled out a package of economic measures to help developing countries tackle the slowdown. We endorsed a 650 billion allocation on new special drawing rights from the International Monetary Fund that will certainly boost reserves and help the global recovery. Of these resources, 33 billion will go to African countries, and we are working to further increase this share. We also sped up the replenishment of IDA 20, the World Bank's fund for the world's poorest countries. Finally, the G20 Common Framework intends to facilitate debt restructuring for countries with excessive debt in a comprehensive and sustainable manner. Compact with Africa countries have been a beacon of hope in these dark times. Your resilience to adverse shocks has increased during the pandemic thanks to your investment in the green and digital transformation. Your experience tells us that bold, transformative, and inclusive reforms pay off. As Germany and France have proposed, compact countries could benefit from stronger financial incentives and technical assistance to deliver on their reform agenda. We are ready to consider all these proposals in the G20 finance track. With the youngest population in the world, Africa, you are the future. It faces enormous political, economic, and social problems and is dramatically affected by climate change. But it also has the vibrant private sector with a growing number of young entrepreneurs and promising startups. Compact countries are best suited to support inclusive economic development, thanks to your commitment to an ambitious reform agenda. Italy and the G20 will stand firmly by your side. Thanks, Angela.
Dankeschön, Mario, und herzliche
Mario. Warm greetings go to Rome. Now I would like to hand the floor to the President of South Africa. Cyril, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chancellor Merkel, Your Excellencies, honored heads of state and government who are present here and those who are participating online. And ladies and gentlemen, let me start off by welcoming this opportunity as a member of the G20, where we use our membership of the G20 to advance the interests and the cause of our sister African countries. But I'd also like to thank you, Chancellor Merkel, for having initiated this whole process of compact with Africa. And I'm particularly pleased that you have dubbed it Compact with Africa rather than Compact for Africa. That is not only politically correct, but that in many ways depicts it correctly, that we should see this as a compact where we work together. COVID-19, as we all know, has taken a significant toll on African countries in many ways. It has set us back when it comes to growth, and in a number of countries has also worsened poverty, inequality, as well as underdevelopment. And a number of African countries have a very limited fiscal space. They also don't have the ability to implement policies that support post-crisis recovery, and that is constrained. We therefore welcome the initiatives of the IMF, the initiatives of the World Bank and the G7 members and others to mobilize resources for Africa's pandemic response as well as recovery. That is truly welcomed. However, much more still needs to be done. African economies will not be able to recover unless the people of Africa are vaccinated against COVID-19. Our most immediate priority must be to end vaccine inequality and ensure that there is access for all African countries to sufficient quantities of vaccines, and that should happen as fast as possible. Beyond the immediate tasks, what is most needed is sustainable investment as well. And for African economies to create a climate of certainty for investors, the rise in global commodity prices and the coming into operation of the African Continental Free Trade Area opens up many and numerous opportunities for African economies. This requires taking advantage of the opportunities in emerging sectors, such as the green economy, renewable energy, and expanding Africa's manufacturing base and capacity through massive industrialization. The G20 Compact with Africa is an important platform for partnership through which we can work together to attract greater levels of investment in African economies. And in this regard, I applaud your initiative, Chancellor Merkel, because the initiative you have taken in this regard has led to a lot of investments being generated in a number of African countries. As we have done to respond to the pandemic, let us continue to work in partnership towards a global recovery that is inclusive and that leaves no country behind. And I am a firm believer that this can be done, and a platform like this gives us the way we thought to be able to do it. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you.
Ja, danke schön, Cyril.
Thank you very much indeed, Cyril. If I may now hand the floor to the present chair of the African Union, President Felix Tshisekedi, that is. You have the floor.
Madame la chancelière de la République fédérale d'Allemagne, mesdames et messieurs les chefs d'État et de gouvernement, mesdames et messieurs en vos titres et qualités, c'est un immense honneur pour moi